I had pieces of old lumber laying around that needed to be recycled. Add to that pieces of tempered glass from an old glass shelf that had seen better days, and I was fully equipped to try to build my very own season extending unit, better known as the good old cold frame. If you cannot afford a full-on greenhouse and don't want to bother building large structures in your garden, a cold frame may be the thing you need to extend your growing season for a few weeks. At least that is what I read in garden books ever since I started researching the topic as a high school student. Watching other people's success with using them gave me the final push to try to making one myself. Just removing all the rusty nails from these scrap pieces of reclaimed wood was a chore in and of itself, so I wanted to be convinced enough to embark on this journey without feeling that my efforts would be in vain. I roughly measured the smaller sides of the pane of glass and cut pieces of 2x4 to that length. Of course, I could not bother with grabbing tape measure or other tools of precision, partially because this was supposed to be a quick experiment, partially because I like the rustic aesthetic. I then laid the glass down and measured the longer side of the wood frame, including the thickness of the shorter sides. While it is not necessary to be precise to the millimeter, it has to be close enough since you cannot cut glass easily. The size of the pane dictates the size of the frame. While I had been ambivalent about cold frames in the past, watching Patrick from 1 Yard Revolution gave me the push I needed to have faith in them. He was using them successfully in Chicago weather. I had no excuses, being in Maryland with more winter sun and milder temperatures. Part of the reason why it took me so long to try these out was that I needed a piece of glass that was destined to be thrown away. This piece of glass was especially good choice. It was stronger glass, used as a furniture top. It would be shatter resistant and better suited for outside weather. While the size was a bit small, I felt it was worth trying. I used pieces of thinner board to nail on the end of one piece to another, creating a quick and easy frame. These would be rather shallow one-piece cold frames, a significant variation on the original design with a box frame and glass lid. I usually embark on making new things and feel free to modify without fear. It is only through experimentation that we can come up with new things. Sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. I wanted the glass to sit flush with the top surfaces, so I had to make a lip using pieces of scrap 1x2s. While I was feeling adventurous with my one-piece design, I could already foresee limitations. Their small size could prove to be a problem, since a smaller glazed space protected from drafts is less likely to hold heat in winter than a larger space like a greenhouse. In fact, a sunken greenhouse is an old design I have seen in books that requires very little supplemental heat to have things growing, with milder weather inside protected from bitter outside cold. The earth serves as a heat bank and insulator, stabilizing the interior climate. I was going to secure the glass into the frame with old strips of lath, but before I did that I wanted to paint the wooden frame, mainly to protect the wood, extending its life, but also to make it look nicer. I chose a vibrant red paint I had stocked away and went about finishing my frame. The red color would also serve a very practical purpose: increase the visibility of the frame to prevent accidental tripping over. That was the plan. That is, if I would be able to actually get this old can of paint open. This is a great project to use leftover paint you may have laying around. I was not planning on affixing the glass pane with glazing putty to seal out all the edges, because I didn't think it was necessary to my purposes. By leaving space for excess hot air to escape, I felt I would prevent the plants from cooking inside on sunnier days. My intention with this frame was to only raise the temperature of the soil a few degrees to hasten germination and seedling growth and protect from late hard frosts. This was already late winter, early spring, and I was under no illusions to use this design as a winter-proof growing box. It was only intended to blunt the blow of late bouts of cold, extending my growing seasons for 2 to 3 weeks, providing me with earlier spring greens. Since the weather had been especially crazy in the last few years, I felt this was a necessary investment. Whenever I'm painting outside, especially old things, I am reminded of a character from a childhood TV show I used to watch in Brazil. It's called Chaves, and the character is Seu Madruga. And if you come from a Latin American country, you might know this from as El Chavo, which is actually, it's originally a Mexican production dubbed to Portuguese. But it's hilarious. And Seu Madruga, or Señor Ramon, I think in Spanish, he is always trying to fix things around his house, and we would often see him painting something and trying to make it new, something old, just by giving it a good coat of paint, is what he used to say. It just makes it better. And the kids would just, poor Mr. Ramon or Seu Madruga, the kids would just really put him in really difficult situations. And Dona Florinda, she was always beating him. So it just reminds me of that. I've always liked to make things with my own two hands, and one day I would love to do a bespoke, full-size greenhouse using odds and ends and recycle things. But until then, I will have to content myself with experimenting with these frames. In this property, we do not get ideal sun exposure in the winter, so a greenhouse is a bit of a white elephant. But who knows what the future can bring. I was already wondering how effective this frame would be. As we were well past the winter solstice, there was more daylight, and hope was growing. Coming up in the next block, I will put this frame to the test. Will it really help me extend my growing season, or will all my work be for naught? Right after this commercial. Suburban Homestead videos have been produced because of the generous support of viewers like you through Patreon and through purchases of my art on Etsy. This week I'm featuring a DVD for a 35-minute stop-motion animation I made using handmade felt puppets. If you live in North America, you can purchase it for just $4.99 through my Etsy shop. I decided to place the cold frame beside another larger frame I had built a few weeks prior. In the new one, I was going to plant arugula, the spicy salad green that rose to national fame with the fresh food movement of this new millennium. I do enjoy eating it very much, and considering how much it costs in stores for half-wilted, barely pungent leaves, I had to start growing them more efficiently to ensure a constant fresh supply. My soil had been covered with all the dried garden waste from the previous growing season. I had roughly chopped, making a sort of mulch layer. I peeled back the mulch to reveal the fertile soil underneath. Keeping the soil covered is essential to keep soil life active, especially during winter. While traditionally garden books would advise you to clear your ground to prevent pests from overwintering, I've started to neglect that more and more, and have seen positive results. I feel that ensuring habitat to house beneficial insects is more valuable than trying to exterminate pests by removing their habitat. I made furrows and started to sprinkle arugula seed. Arugula is a great seed to grow in cold climates. While you may be tempted to grow tomatoes or other warm season crops during winter in a cold frame or greenhouse, growing cold tolerant winter greens is the way to grow. The purpose is to prevent damaging frosts and raise soil temperatures a bit, and not to create a balmy tropical climate inside. That would take added energy and better insulation. Arugula also germinates easily and generally does well with direct sowing. In warm months, it can germinate in as little as 2 to 3 days. Cold will make it germinate slowly, but a cold frame can hasten that process. Because it has small seed, I barely covered them with soil, just sprinkling them with the straw mulch I had removed. This way, I don't risk the soil being left uncovered, and they are able to grow through the light mulch. Because it had rained well for several weeks during winter, I wasn't planning on watering inside the cold frames while the temperature were low. Moisture gets trapped in the frames, providing enough humidity to sprout plants and keep them alive. During warm spells, there is a possibility of plants wilting or getting scorched, because in the odd 60 to 70 degree sunny winter day, temperatures could potentially reach the 80s or 90s inside of the cold frame. About a week and a half later, I went to check my cold frame for signs of life and could see new growth as arugula seeds were sprouting through the mulch. The frame had worked. I had hastened the arugula growth, gaining me several weeks in the growing season. The temperatures had become unseasonably high, and I decided it was safe to remove the frame. While I was sure the cold snaps would return, the arugula was going to be just fine, and I could use the frames to get a new batch of early greens going.